Kelsey and I are in the process of getting ready for Passover. That's what our family does. We celebrate Passover as well as the biblical feasts and the holidays. And with that comes trying to adequately communicate that to our children. And one of the things that we're focusing on this year is the concept of God being a lighthouse. When you look at the Passover story, you see God delivering his people with a mighty right hand, and then he leads them out of the darkness and the situation that they were in, guiding them by a pillar of cloud by day or a pillar of fire by night. And we want to communicate to our kids that even though the situations around you might be hard or trying or even at times completely hopeless, if you are under God's protective care, you're going to be led by him. You know, there's so many times when I see these pictures of this beautiful lighthouse being bombarded by waves and storms. It got me thinking to see how strong our God is and how useful that lighthouse really is. If you're a ship out in that storm and you're led astray and you're in complete darkness and turmoil and upheaval, you're going to need a saving light to guide you out of that storm. But how often can I allow so many other things to become my lighthouse? How many things that I allow to dictate what I think, what I feel, my direction, instead of asking the one who will ultimately lead me out of those storms for direction. In the health aspect, how many times can we put our faith and our hope and our trust in another man, in a doctor? And please do not get me wrong, I'm not saying that doctors are bad or they don't have their place. They can be very helpful. But when we are so overcome with the trials around us or the trials of our health or the fear of this world that we forget to go to the author and the finisher of our faith, and we automatically go to a doctor or automatically internalize and run with the first thing that they say instead of going to what God says, we are not doing justice to the one who created us. How many times have I run to man to save me? And the more and more I study his word and I read his scriptures, and the more he reveals to me his purpose and plans for me, even in the health arena, the things that he's created, the things that he has prescribed in his scripture, it goes to show how much I don't know and how much I need to rely on him more and more and more. And it's really, really an amazing thing to know that he desires to guide us. In Proverbs chapter 3, it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths smooth. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, and shun evil. It will be a cure for your body and tonic for your bones." So that just goes to show that God really is out for our benefit if we turn to him, and if we do not rely on the things that we think, or even I can be so smart in my own mind, and yet when I turn back and look at the sum total of my choices that I've made on my own, I'm like, what was I thinking? You know, seriously, I could have saved so much heartache and so much turmoil if I would have just used a little bit of wisdom and I would have turned towards him and his word instead of thinking that I knew it all. There's been many times when I've heard people say, well, I can't take that oil, or I can't drink raw milk because my doctor said it's not good for me. And I just sit back and think, I'm like, wow, the benefits that you are missing because of, first of all, them not knowing any better, but second of all, for trusting in man rather than trusting in the one who created such things. Our desire and our hope is that people would be in a place where they're receptive, where they're willing to understand God's plan and purposes for their life in health and in many different areas. But for their health, to realize that God knows more, and there's so much more in this book for our healing than anyone can ever imagine. If we are willing to just, first of all, sit down and study, to acknowledge that he knows more than we do, and thirdly, to be willing not to put our faith and trust in man. And again, please don't get me wrong. there's nothing wrong with doctors. There's nothing wrong with going to the doctor. But if our hope and our trust trumps God, and that hope and trust is put in doctors, then we got our priorities mixed up. So what are you putting your stock in? Are you using God as your lighthouse to guide you through the trials of this life or through your health circumstances? Or are you putting your faith and trust and guidance into someone who, first of all, doesn't know what is ultimately best for you?